Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a quiet South Carolina farmer receives a cold bureaucratic letter demanding his beloved lakefront for community access, he refuses to bow. What begins as a land dispute soon spirals into a ruthless war of wills, lies, and power. And one man's stand against it all. I never liked surprises. Maybe it came from years in the Army. Or maybe from growing up with a father who believed a man's worth was in the way he maintained his land. Surprises meant something had slipped past you, a blind spot, a breach, a failure of attention. So when I opened that thick envelope on a Tuesday morning, still holding a mug of half-warm coffee and brushing mud off my boots from the livestock pens, I knew before I read a word that something was wrong. It wasn't the look of the letter that got me. Glossy, official HOA emblem embossed in silver foil. It was the tone. Not Dear Mr. Hale, but to property owner of parcel 771B. Cold, bureaucratic. I read it 3 times. The gist was simple. The Silver Pines Estates Homeowners Association had a proposal, a generous, visionary, community-minded development opportunity. They were offering to lease 60 feet of my lakefront shoreline for shared community access, complete with landscaping, docks, and weekly maintenance covered by them. In exchange, I'd get market access to sell my farm's products to their 62 households. It wasn't a request. It was a nicely dressed demand. They gave me 5 business days to respond. I had never met these people. Hadn't stepped foot on their manicured hillside since the first model homes went up 7 years ago. Back then, it was just 30 luxury houses with symmetrical shutters and smug solar panels. But now, apparently, it was a full-blown HOA with an agenda. And now they had their eyes on my shoreline. My shoreline, the same 500 feet my father fought to keep unpartitioned when the co-op dissolved in the 90s. The same gentle slope where I taught my dogs to swim and where Sarah and I sat every July 4th with cold beer and mosquito spray. I put the letter on the workbench in the barn and stared at it for a good 10 minutes while the old refrigerator hummed in the corner and one of the cows lowed outside. It wasn't just the audacity, it was the assumption. Like my land was some unfinished part of their development plan. I didn't waste time. That afternoon, I called Jim Taverley, my real estate attorney, and had him draft a reply. To whom it may concern, the parcel in question is private property under federal, state, and county law. It is not part of any shared use agreement, nor subject to any HOA jurisdiction. Your proposal is rejected in full. Any further communication is to be directed to my attorney of record, James Taverley, Esquidisers, Columbia, SC. 2 sentences, precise and sharp. I had it printed, signed it in blue ink, scanned it, and emailed it back within an hour. Then I mailed a certified hard copy because people like that respected notarized paper more than truth. Sarah, my wife, read the original letter twice, her lips pressed tight. She didn't say much, just folded it neatly and tucked it back in the envelope. That's when I knew she was worried. She only does that when she's thinking 6 moves ahead. By the next morning, she'd already found 3 articles on similar cases, HOAs trying to grab land for community use through pressure and procedural loopholes. I brushed it off. I'd dealt with worse. Engineers who tried to redirect my creek, a neighbor who once tried to claim my fence line was off by 3 feet. I'd seen what people did when they saw open space and smelled weakness. The thing is, I don't do weakness. I'd spent the last 15 years running this farm the way my father taught me. Early mornings, honest tools, no debt. Our land had been in the family since 1958, and not once had we missed a tax bill, zoning update, or permit renewal. The fence lines were legal to the inch. The shoreline was recorded in 3 surveys. The deed was so clean, it could have been laminated. That week, nothing happened. No follow-up, no reply. The quiet didn't fool me. I'd seen enough to know this wasn't the end. It was the coiling before the lunge. And sure enough, the first crack came through a friend. A guy named Carl, works at the county recorder's office, old Army buddy, called me on Friday. "You got neighbors filing public access inquiries on your parcel," he said, low and cautious. "Not official yet, but the paperwork smells opportunistic." "Silver Pines?" I asked. He chuckled bitterly. "What else?" I thanked him and hung up. I didn't tell Sarah, not yet. I just walked down the hill to the lake. The dogs followed, ears perked. I stood there for a long time, watching the way the water moved quiet and sure, brushing up against the reeds like it had done every day for the last 40 years. 60 feet. That's what they wanted. 60 feet of this piece. I looked out across the water and said to no one in particular, "Over my dead body." The first thing I noticed was the silence. That kind of heavy, unnatural quiet you only get when something's off. It was the following Thursday. I'd been at the county farmers market all morning selling pasture-raised beef and bringing home a few extra sacks of seed. Took the long way back, enjoying the drive, the old F-250 rumbling like a contented hound. But the minute I turned off the main road and rolled up to my gate, I felt it. The dogs felt it too. Ranger let out a low growl in the back seat. Dakota sat up, ears sharp. I opened the gate slow, pulled in, and that's when I saw them. 3 men in neon orange safety vests down by the lake, hammering survey stakes into my grass like they owned the damn place. I froze for a beat. My first thought was, trespassers. Then I caught the logo stitched on their backs. Silver Pines Estates HOA. I parked fast, climbed out, and made for the barn. Grabbed my 12-gauge, not loaded, not even cocked, but cradled openly in my arms. This was South Carolina, not California. A man had a right to make his boundaries understood. I whistled, and the dogs flanked me as I headed down toward the water. The men didn't even flinch. One of them, tall, sunburned, clipboard in hand, turned to me like I was interrupting a team-building exercise. "Morning," he said. "Don't mind us. We're just doing preliminary marking for the proposed shared access zone." I stopped 10 feet away. "On my property?" He nodded. "Per the upcoming petition for public utility designation standard prep, you'll get court notification once the filing's approved. Get off my land." He gave me a half smile, clearly rehearsed. "Sir, I understand your concern, but this is part of a community improvement plan. You'll be compensated. It's a process." "The process," I said, "starts with a warrant or a court order. You have neither. You're trespassing." Another guy, shorter, holding a measuring laser, lifted his phone and started recording. "For our protection," he said. "Good," I told him. "Keep it rolling." Then I turned and called the sheriff. Deputy Keller showed up 20 minutes later, lights flashing, but no siren. I'd known Keller since he was a rookie. Good man, not one for HOA nonsense. He stepped out of the cruiser, gave me a nod, then looked at the 3 vest-clad intruders like they were dog shit on a church carpet. I explained the situation. He checked their IDs, wrote down statements, and confirmed the obvious. They had no legal right to be on my property. Clipboard guy kept insisting they were under administrative directive and operating in good faith, but Keller shut that down fast. Good faith doesn't let you walk onto a man's private land with stakes and tape. You want to test that? We can go the hard route. They backed off then. No apologies. Just packed up and left, slowly, like they still owned the air. I watched them the whole time, hand on the shotgun. After they were gone, Keller pulled me aside. "This HOA's been poking around a lot lately," he said. "You're not the first." "What's the angle?" "Some of these new developments. They get desperate for amenities. Lake access drives up value. You're sitting on the last unclaimed stretch." "Not unclaimed," I said. "It's mine," he nodded. "I'd keep the cameras rolling if I were you." Already had a few up, but that night I added 3 more, wired everything into a cloud backup, and gave Sarah the login. She didn't argue, just brought me coffee and a loaded flash drive with every document we'd ever filed on the property. I slept with one eye open. The next morning, I got a voicemail from a blocked number. Woman's voice, formal but smug. "Mr. Hale, this is Karen Druitt with the Silver Pines HOA. It seems there was a misunderstanding yesterday during our community improvement assessment. We hope you'll reconsider your position. It's important for neighbors to work together for the greater good. We remain optimistic about a peaceful resolution." She didn't leave a callback number. That afternoon, a shiny black SUV drove slowly past our driveway, twice. The second time, it stopped just long enough for someone in the passenger seat to take a photo with a long lens. I waved. They drove off. That night, someone left a flyer on our mailbox. "Let's make the lake for everyone," with my address circled in red ink. Sarah burned it in the wood stove without a word. It came by courier, not regular mail. Thick envelope, crisp seal, and a folder inside with the kind of language that only lawyers could invent. At the top, petition for declaratory relief and easement by necessity. Silver Pines Estates HOA versus Judson Hale. I wasn't surprised, just disgusted. I read it standing by the kitchen sink, coffee untouched, Sarah watching me with that tight-lipped look she wore whenever something needed fixing but hadn't been broken by her. The HOA was suing me. Suing me. The claim that Silver Pines residents had a historic community-established tradition of shoreline use, and that denying access would cause irreparable harm to the public interest. They wanted the court to grant a public easement across my property, 60 feet wide, straight down to the lake. They even included a suggested layout, complete with a picnic area and a canoe launch. But that wasn't the part that got me. No, the part that made my stomach turn was Exhibit C, a grainy photocopied page from an old agricultural co-op map, dated 1983, with my father's property outlined in faded yellow and stamped with the phrase, Shoreline Shared Utility Zone. I knew that map. I'd seen the original once years ago when my dad explained how he pulled the farm out of the co-op before it collapsed in the late 80s. That stamp, it applied to a small storage dock on the far west corner of the property, a muddy patch now overgrown with blackberry thickets. Not the gently sloped beach the HOA had staked out for their lawn chairs and jet skis. And yet here it was, presented as if my entire shoreline had been public parkland since the Reagan administration. Sarah said nothing at first, just brought over the folder of old land records we kept in the fireproof safe. We spent the rest of the day digging. Title transfers, plats, survey maps, notarized affidavits. All of it confirmed what I already knew. Our land was clean. No easements, no right-of-way, no shared utility zones. Just us and the water. Still, I wasn't going to walk into court empty-handed. I called up Ed Trammell, a retired land use attorney I met once at a zoning meeting. Cranky as hell, but sharp as a tack. He put me in touch with a forensic surveyor out of Greenville, name of Lucas Barron. Young, precise, with a habit of quoting state code like scripture. Lucas came out the next day with a drone, ground-penetrating radar, and more topographic overlays than I thought existed. 3 days later, he handed me a report the thickness of a diner menu. This, he said, tapping a highlighted section, is the original dock site from 1983, 30 yards west of the cove you're using now. That document they're waving around. It doesn't apply to your current shoreline. And according to these filings, he flipped pages. Your father legally severed all co-op obligations when he bought out the remaining equity in 1991. It's ironclad. Will it hold in court? Lucas smirked. Unless their judge is drunk or dating someone on the HOA board, you're golden. Still, the HOA wasn't letting up. Their lawyers filed a motion to expedite, claimed the community's summer recreation season was being unjustly delayed. They even had the gall to mention mental distress and sun exposure deprivation. I kid you not. Some woman named Donna Fitch filed an affidavit saying the lack of beach access was causing anxiety in her 2 labradoodles. Meanwhile, I started getting polite but intrusive emails from realtors, wondering if I'd ever considered subdividing the unused lakefront to increase its value. One even offered a discreet off-market sale to an anonymous buyer. That night, Sarah finally snapped. They're trying to wear us down, she said, pacing. Like termites, little bites until the whole thing collapses. I didn't say anything. I was too busy reading one of Dad's old letters, tucked in a box we almost forgot we had. It was dated April 1992, written to a county commissioner. He'd refused a development easement for shoreline improvements, citing erosion, livestock safety, and, God bless the man, a fundamental dislike of smug HOA types in pressed khakis. We scanned that letter, added it to the evidence file. Dad was still helping, even from the grave. The court date was set for early May. I wore a suit I hadn't needed since a cousin's funeral and stood next to Ed Trammell while Silver Pines lawyers argued that my property had served as communal access for decades. They presented fuzzy photos from the 90s, a few kids on inner tubes, an old man fishing from the shore, no names, no dates, no permissions. Ed calmly flipped open our file, showed deed history, drone photos, affidavits from neighbors who'd lived nearby since the 70s, all saying the same thing. No one but the Hales ever had access to that shoreline. The judge didn't issue a ruling that day, but I could tell he wasn't impressed with the HOA's argument. He asked for additional briefs, told both sides to keep the peace in the meantime. I almost laughed. Peace? They weren't interested in peace. They wanted a beach. My beach. And they weren't planning to ask again. They didn't wait for a court decision. They didn't call. They didn't even knock. It was the first Sunday of May. Warm, clear, the kind of South Carolina spring morning that makes you forget, just for a moment, how ugly people can be. I just finished loading feed into the south pasture when I heard the dogs barking like someone had let a fox loose in the henhouse. I wiped my hands, headed for the fence line, and then I saw them, cars, dozens of them, parked along the edge of the gravel access road like it was a goddamn fairground. SUVs, golf carts, even one of those bloated chrome trucks that never sees a day of real work. People were streaming down the hill from the tree line, my tree line, with coolers, folding chairs, Bluetooth speakers, and picnic umbrellas. Kids darted across the field with pool noodles and inflatable flamingos. And then I saw the sign, a laminated poster zip-tied to one of my pasture fences. Silver Pines Community Lake Day, May 7th, fun in the sun. My name wasn't on it. I didn't walk. I marched. Sarah met me at the porch, face pale. "They've been coming in waves for an hour," she said. I called the sheriff's office. "They're on the way." I didn't even reply. I went inside, grabbed the megaphone from the storm shelter, one of those military-grade ones with a bullhorn, switch, and siren, and slung the hunting rifle over my shoulder. Unloaded, but clean, visible, and legal. I walked down toward the shoreline, cutting across my own pasture, now rutted with tire tracks and trampled wildflowers, and climbed onto the flatbed trailer parked near the boat ramp. Dakota followed me like a sentry. Then I flipped on the megaphone. "This is private property," I announced, voice calm but carrying. "You are trespassing. You have 2 minutes to pack your things and leave. Law enforcement has been notified." Half the people stopped and looked up like I was some grumpy park ranger. The other half didn't even blink, too busy setting up speakers, unpacking wine coolers, or doing yoga poses on my goddamn lawn. Then came Karen. She emerged from the crowd like she was walking onto a debate stage. Visor, clipboard, HOA polo shirt like a badge of rank. She marched right up to the trailer, not even flinching at the rifle. "Mr. Hale," she said, hands on hips, "this is a peaceful community event. You're escalating unnecessarily. Get off my land." "This area," she said, pulling out a folded document, "is currently under petition for reclassification. We have submitted paperwork to the county for public utility designation. That gives us provisional rights of access during consideration." I stared at her. "That's not how any of this works." "It's a gray area," she said, lifting her chin. "We're simply acting in the spirit of community stewardship." I turned the megaphone back on. "You are on private land. You are in violation of South Carolina trespass law. Leave now." This time, a few folks started looking nervous. One dad grabbed his kid and slinked toward his SUV. Another group deflated their flamingo. Karen stepped closer. "We're not intimidated by noise and optics, Mr. Hale. You can't bully your neighbors." I didn't answer her. Instead, I pointed to the high-definition camera mounted to a tree at the edge of the bluff. "Smile, Karen. Everything's being uploaded to the cloud." That's when the sirens came. 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled in from the gravel road, parting the parade of lawn chairs and folding tables like the Red Sea. Deputy Keller again, and another younger deputy I didn't recognize. They took one look at the situation and moved fast, not aggressive, but authoritative. "Clear the property," Keller ordered through his loudspeaker. "All unauthorized parties, off the premises. This is private land." Karen went into lawyer mode, fast-talking, waving her document, citing obscure civic entitlement statutes that didn't exist. It didn't work. Within 15 minutes, the so-called Lake Day was dismantled. Tents down, grills packed, trash bags abandoned like empty promises. They left muddy tire tracks and half-crushed solo cups. But they left. Keller stayed behind to take my statement. Sarah handed over the video files and a printed damage assessment. I counted 11 separate vehicles that had driven past the gate and onto the meadow, ignoring every no trespassing sign we'd posted. "Press charges?" Keller asked. I nodded. "Damn right." Later that evening, I filed a civil claim for property damage and distress. Included photos of the ruts in the grass, the broken fence post, and a video clip of 2 kids chasing one of my goats with a glow stick. I also sent a cease and desist letter to the HOA's legal counsel, CC'd to the county commissioner, local planning board, and the regional news outlet that had once profiled my farm as an example of agricultural sustainability. Let them see just how sustainable it felt when 60 strangers invaded your field with tiki torches and frozen margarita blenders. By nightfall, Sarah and I stood on the porch looking down at the lake. The water was still. The sun had dropped behind the ridge, casting long shadows over the scarred pasture. "They're not going to stop," she said quietly. "No," I replied, "but neither am I." The paper didn't look right. I was sitting in Ed Trammell's office, surrounded by half-drunk coffee cups and legal folders older than most members of the HOA board, when he slid a county parcel map across the table toward me. He tapped a shaded section near the shoreline, my shoreline, now marked in soft gray and labeled Provisional Public Easement Area, under consideration. I blinked. The hell is that? Ed didn't answer right away, just leaned back, steepled his fingers, and stared at the ceiling like it had personally insulted him. "This," he said finally, "is what they filed with the County Land Records Department last week. Someone inserted this notation during an amendment session. No hearing, no public notice, no court order, just slipped in." I looked closer. The digital timestamp was recent, 3 days ago. And it wasn't there before? Nope. I checked archived versions. This label, this easement, didn't exist 2 weeks ago. I sat back, heart thumping. They faked a reclassification. Ed gave a humorless smile. They're trying to build a paper trail, fabricate the appearance of legitimacy. If they can show official designations in multiple sources, they can argue your land's been publicly flagged for community access. Judges don't like messy jurisdictional fights. HOA is hoping if they muddy the water long enough, someone in robes will just throw up their hands and call it a shared zone. Can we reverse it? He nodded. We can challenge it, but we'll need proof it was fraudulent. And that means digging. I didn't go home. I went straight to the county recorder's office. I knew Carl, the clerk there, from back in the day. He used to help me scan soil testing reports when I was applying for organic certification. A good guy with a bad poker face. When I asked who had logged the parcel update, his eyes shifted like he was watching a bar fight out of frame. "It came from internal," he said finally. "Planning department. Name on the file is Leonard Griggs." I didn't know the name, but Ed did. "Leonard," he said when I called him. "Jesus, that man's been cozy with developers since Clinton's second term." Griggs, it turned out, was a mid-level planning administrator, the kind of guy who never says no if the right person brings him muffins and a zoning form. He'd worked with Karen before, back when Silver Pines first got permitted, and according to Carl, he'd been visiting the HOA's clubhouse for informal consultation twice in the last month. The pieces were falling together, too clean, too coordinated. I brought in a private investigator, a guy named Sean Bailey, ex-law enforcement with a gift for unearthing things people thought they'd buried. Within a week, Sean found emails, not leaked, not hacked, but shared, from a former HOA treasurer who'd resigned for personal reasons the year before. Apparently, this treasurer hadn't liked where things were headed. The emails were damning. Karen had written clear as day, "If we can't negotiate shoreline use, we build legitimacy through official documents. Griggs can annotate a planning map, and we back it up with public event photos, then file for historical recognition. By the time he sues again, we're holding the narrative." Griggs replied, "Get me scanned plans and a draft description. I'll patch it in during next month's review. It won't flag unless someone screams." Well, I was screaming now. I forwarded everything to Ed. He built a complaint dossier thicker than a hog's leg and hand-delivered it to the state attorney general's office in Columbia. Fraud, abuse of planning authority, attempted coercion through falsified records, the works. Within days, we got a reply, not from the AG, but from the Office of the Inspector General. They were opening a preliminary inquiry into the conduct of both the HOA and Griggs, with possible federal oversight if falsified land records were confirmed. Sarah cried when I told her, not because she was scared, but because for the first time in weeks, we weren't just defending, we were counterattacking. That night, I poured a whiskey and sat on the porch, watching the fireflies blink between the cedars. And just when I thought it couldn't get any darker, I got a call from an unknown number. It was anonymous, voice modulated, but the message was simple. "You don't understand who you're up against. You'd do better to take the payout and walk away." I didn't say a word, just let the message play out. I played it again and again. Sarah heard it too. Her only response was to go inside and come back with my father's old .38 caliber. She set it on the side table next to me and said, "You lock the doors tonight." In the following days, someone dumped a bag of rotting fish at our gate. A dozen HOA residents, or people acting in their name, flooded our farm's Yelp page with fake reviews. Hostile owner, unsafe environment, abusive toward children. We saved screenshots of everything, every click, every post, every threat. Then we packaged it up and sent it to a contact Ed had in the FBI's Public Corruption Division. I wasn't playing defense anymore. They wanted to smear my name, rewrite the map, steal my shoreline. Fine. Let's see how they liked it when the feds came knocking. They showed up in suits. 2 black SUVs, unmarked but unmistakable, pulled up just past the county line and parked on the gravel turnout like they owned the horizon. The men who stepped out weren't local deputies or state agents. These guys had the quiet confidence of people who carry federal badges and don't need to show them unless it's a bad day for someone else. They introduced themselves as part of a joint task force from the Inspector General's office and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of South Carolina. Their names were short, forgettable, but their questions were not. They wanted to know everything. The original letter from the HOA, the party at the lake, the forged parcel map, the emails, the threats. They asked about Karen, about Griggs, about patterns, about pressure. Ed and I handed them 3 manila folders and a thumb drive. They barely blinked when they saw the contents. "We've been tracking activity like this in several counties," one of them said. "This one's just louder." They stayed for nearly 4 hours, going over every timeline, every document, every weird interaction. Sarah brought them sweet tea and banana bread, like she'd known them for years. They smiled, polite but focused. One of them asked if we had backup footage beyond what was uploaded. I showed him the external drives. He took them without asking. By the end of the day, they told me 2 things. First, that Griggs was already under internal review for unrelated ethics violations. This was going to sink him. Second, that they needed one more event, one more public undeniable act of overreach to justify a full criminal referral. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, a neighbor, not part of Silver Pines, just a retired teacher down the road, called to warn me. Flyers were circulating again. This time, more organized. Community vote, reclaim the lake. It listed a date, a time, and, unbelievably, my address. I drove into town and saw the same poster taped to the bulletin board in the feed store. Same thing on the library corkboard, even the gas station. They were planning another invasion, but this time I didn't call the sheriff. I called the feds. The agents told me, "Don't interfere, don't block the event. Just let them come, and let them bury themselves." So I waited. On Sunday morning, I shaved. Clean jeans, collared shirt, boots polished like inspection day. Sarah looked at me like I was suiting up for war. I was. By 11, they started arriving. Not as many as the last time, but enough. 30, maybe 40 people, setting up chairs, beach balls, banners. Karen showed up last, flanked by 2 board members and a guy with a GoPro clipped to his hat like he was filming a promo for a travel agency. I didn't speak, didn't threaten, just watched from the hilltop. Then the unmarked cars rolled in. Not sirens, not flashing lights, just slow, confident arrivals, the kind that says, "We know who you are, and now you're going to know who we are too." Karen spotted them first and froze. The agents moved quickly, identified themselves, asked her to step aside. A second team approached the HOA board members, handed them sealed envelopes. One woman began crying. The man with the GoPro tried to walk away until someone gently took his arm and whispered something in his ear that made his knees buckle. In 20 minutes, the event was over. No arrests. Not yet. Just interviews, warnings, and the start of a formal federal investigation into fraud, abuse of power, and attempted unlawful appropriation of private land. The feds even interviewed attendees, asked them where they'd heard about the event, how it was framed, whether they were told the land was public. Most of them looked confused. A few looked angry. I heard one woman mutter, "She told us it was already approved." That afternoon, Sarah and I sat on the porch again. She watched the lake. I watched the road. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Ed. Local papers calling this the Lake Keowee land grab. Press is circling. Stay calm. They're crumbling. Later that evening, I got a call from an HOA resident. Older guy. Never spoke to me before. He cleared his throat and said, "Mr. Hale, I just wanted to say, I didn't know. Not all of us did. If we'd known what Karen was doing, I'm sorry." I didn't say much back, just thanked him and hung up. I didn't need apologies. I needed them to stop pretending this was about community. This was about power, control, entitlement. And now, the ones who'd written fake maps and forged false narratives were finally getting dragged into the light. The subpoenas turned into arrests faster than I expected. It started with Leonard Griggs, a quiet little line in the local paper. County planning official under investigation for document tampering resigns amid ongoing probe. That was a Thursday. By Monday, Karen Druitt was in handcuffs. The photos hit social media like wildfire. There she was, pressed slacks and HOA polo still tucked in like she thought she'd walk out 10 minutes later. But the agents didn't cuff someone unless they were serious. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted unlawful taking. That last charge made me whistle. Not civil, criminal. The board didn't take long to collapse after that. 2 more arrests, 3 resignations, and 1 tearful appearance on local news from their former treasurer, the same woman whose leaked emails blew the case wide open. She gave a live interview, hands shaking, voice flat. "I told them this wasn't right," she said. "They told me to get in line or get out." The next morning, Ed called me. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "They're offering settlement." "Who?" "The HOA. What's left of it. Their insurance carrier's in full panic mode. They want to make it go away." "How much?" $780,000. I stood in my kitchen, barefoot on the old tile, holding the receiver like it might burn through my palm. "They admit fault." Ed chuckled. "They're not calling it that, of course. Without admission of wrongdoing. But the amount says everything." I didn't respond right away. I was thinking of the pasture, the shore, the trash they left behind, thinking of my father's signature on the old deed. That perfect straight line, no frills. He'd never let anyone take what was his. Then I asked, "Does the settlement include legal recognition of the property boundaries? A permanent injunction?" "Yes, it locks everything. No further claims, no right-of-way, no historical access nonsense. Plus, county commissions pushing for designation as a protected agricultural buffer zone. You'd be untouchable." I said yes. The paperwork was signed 3 days later. The money wired into an account Sarah and I didn't touch for a week. We didn't celebrate, didn't buy anything. We just sat on the porch and waited to feel safe again. And slowly, we did. Then came the hearing. It wasn't criminal court, not yet, but a public administrative review before the County Ethics Board and the Regional Land Use Commission. I was asked to testify, so I wore my clean shirt again, boots polished, same as the day the feds arrived. I sat in front of a panel of 7, planners, legal experts, community reps. Across the aisle sat 2 lawyers from the HOA's former firm, looking like men who knew they'd backed the wrong horse. I told the story from the beginning. The letter, the trespass, the fake engineers, the party, the forged maps, the threats. I told it without anger, just facts. Let the weight of their tactics hang in the room like humidity before a thunderstorm. Then I handed them a copy of the last HOA flyer, the one with my address printed in red under the words "Reclaim the Lake." No one spoke for a long time after that. The board's findings were delivered 2 weeks later. Fraudulent use of public planning systems, coordinated attempt to misrepresent land records, violation of multiple state and federal ethics statutes. But what hit hardest was the recommendation: permanent dissolution of the Silver Pines Estates HOA charter, pending a court-administered oversight plan. They shut the whole damn thing down. Karen's trial was scheduled for the fall. I didn't need to attend. I'd done my part. But when I saw the report on local TV, the anchor saying words like falsification, abuse of planning authority, illegal land grab, I let myself smile. One day, a car pulled into the driveway. Not a stranger. One of the former residents of Silver Pines, mid-50s, salt and pepper beard, flannel shirt, stood by the fence, hat in hand. "Mr. Hale," he said, "I just wanted to thank you. I didn't know how far it had gone. We trusted her. We were wrong." I nodded. He turned to go. Then he paused. "You ever think about doing a small produce stand-up by the road? My wife's obsessed with your tomatoes." I laughed. "I'll think about it." When he left, Sarah walked over and leaned on my shoulder. "You know," she said, "you really should do that tomato stand." A year passed. Not fast, not smooth, but solid, like watching winter thaw from the inside out. The kind of change you don't notice day to day. But then one morning you wake up and realize the air smells like honeysuckle again, not like burnt nerves and legal dust. The settlement money sat in the bank untouched for months. We didn't spend a dime of it at first, not out of fear, but out of principle. That land wasn't saved for cash. It was saved because it was mine, because it was ours, and because someone needed to be told, finally and clearly, you don't get to rewrite what's already written in dirt and sweat and deed ink. But I'll admit, we did make one change. I built a dock, not a big one, not a showy boardwalk with faux lanterns or cocktail seating, just a simple wooden pier that stretched about 30 feet into the lake, wide enough for 2 chairs and a dog to nap between them. It had no gate, no sign, just aged pine and clean water. Ranger took to it first. Dakota followed. Sarah and I spent the first morning there with thermoses of black coffee and leftover cornbread. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The pasture grew back better than I expected. The county even sent a grant for erosion control, part of a new farm buffer incentive policy they claimed was inspired by recent conflicts. I didn't ask questions. I just cashed the check and ordered native seed blends to replant the worst of the tire ruts. As for Silver Pines, the place changed, quieted down. After the HOA was dissolved, the community reorganized under something called a voluntary neighborhood association. Smaller, less ambitious, less Karen. I heard she moved out 6 months after her plea deal, some kind of deferred conviction with conditions. Probably never serve a day. Didn't matter. She was gone. A few neighbors came by in the months after, some to apologize, others just to buy eggs or jam. One guy helped me replace a busted irrigation valve after a storm. Another dropped off homemade salsa and a note that said, "We'd rather have you than a boat ramp." The local paper did a piece titled "One Man's Line in the Sand." They wanted a photo. I said no. But I did let them take a picture of the new dock, empty, mist curling off the water behind it. No people, just the place itself, unmoved. One day, Sarah surprised me. She'd made a sign, hand-carved oak sealed in linseed oil. I hung it at the gate. Hale Farm private property. No HOA beach access, ever. People smiled when they saw it, even laughed. A few said it should be printed on T-shirts. I didn't care about the attention. It wasn't a message to them. It was a line in the ground, a reminder. Not everything is negotiable. Not everything is for sale. Not everything bends.